So I said, that is not a dog. That is my wife.
It's very good.
The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare is the newest Guy Ritchie directed action film starring Henry Cavill. And when I found out Guy Ritchie and Henry Cavill were getting together for a movie, I got excited about that. Then I found out that this movie is loosely based on true events from World War II, and that was pretty exciting. And then I found out that Ian Fleming, the creator of James Bond, created James Bond with the inspiration of a guy named Gus March Phillips. And that's the guy that Henry Cavill is playing in this movie. With all of that information, I was hyped for this thing. I had to see it day one, went and saw The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, and I had a good time. With Guy Ritchie, you're going to get movies that are great, like Snatch, like The Gentleman, but other times you get movies like Operation Fortune, and you get movies like The Wrath of Man. Both of those not so great, both of those great, and then right in the middle you get movies like Sherlock Holmes, which some days I like more than others. So that's kind of where I'm at with Guy Ritchie. I will say that The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare leans more toward the good side of Guy Ritchie's directing style, rather than the style that I'm not a big fan of, but we are going to get into that in the review. As far as the synopsis goes for this movie, you have Winston Churchill at the beginning of World War II, before America has joined the war, trying to ward off the Nazis. But the Nazis have control of the oceans, they have their U-boats, they're cutting off the English at all sides, and they've officially given the English their ultimatum. They say, listen, surrender now, join this agreement, and we won't destroy you. But if you don't, we're going to cut everything off and we're going to roll over England. And so Winston Churchill has to put a stop to that. So he hires Brigadier Gubbins, played by Cary Elwes in this movie. And Cary Elwes' character is tasked with putting together an elite force of people headed up by Gus March Phillips, again played by Henry Cavill. And they are going to go behind enemy lines into Nazi territory and stop their ability to bring supplies to their U-boats, which is eventually going to cripple their navy. Now, again, this is loosely based off true events, so that the things that they did in this movie, actually cutting off the supplies, that's the true event. And I'm pretty sure the stuff in between, getting there, getting the job done, that's where they took some liberties. Now, I don't have a problem with that because I went to watch an entertaining movie. I didn't need to see a documentary. I'm sure there's going to be one, if there isn't one already, of the true events from what happened behind enemy lines. I went to get entertained, and I was entertained. Let's get into my positives and some of my negatives. The first positive I have for this movie is Henry Cavill. Anytime he's on the screen, not only does he eat up the scenery, which is Henry Cavill's thing to do, he's a fantastic actor, but not only does Henry Cavill do a good job keeping the audience interested, anytime he's on screen, he's killing it. He just makes this movie fun. In fact, it got to the point where it would cut away from Henry Cavill and I'd start to get bored, but we'll get to my negatives in a second. The other positive I have for this movie is going to be the action scenes. They are a lot of fun. I'm not going to sit here and lie. The action scenes in this movie are awesome. From the opening scene where they do some trickery with a boat, all the way to the end scene where they are just taking people out. And it's not always like rough and tough action, although you get a lot of that from Alan Richardson. That guy is an absolute beast. He is huge. And he's pretty much using arrows throughout this entire movie, but at one point he gets an axe and just goes to town on some Nazis. And there's nothing wrong with that. Getting to see hundreds of Nazis get killed in this movie, it's just something you want to see. It's something that's fun to see. It was a good time. I loved the action sequences in this movie. However, the action sequences in this movie lead me to my first negative, and my first negative for this movie is there's no real sense of danger, because while you're having a great time with the action scenes, you never feel like any of the characters in this entire movie are ever in any real danger. There was no edge of your seat like, oh no, is he going to make it out of this alive? Every single character in this movie, you never feel like any of them are really in any danger. Like, you know, these guys are so good, they're just going to make it through. Now, in the real story of this group that went behind enemy lines, if they all lived, I get that the director at that point could just go, well, pretty much just going to make these guys invincible because they did live. But if you're deviating from the original story, which is what I understand about this movie, like some of the situations that they get themselves into, they have to fight their way out of, like some of those situations aren't necessarily the situations that happened. And so if that's the case, the viewer should feel some danger or some stakes for the characters in this movie instead of just watching them wipe everybody out the entire way. And again, to my point about it being a positive, you enjoy watching these Nazis lose. You enjoy watching these Nazis get outsmarted. There's never a time where you're rooting for the bad guys in this movie. But on the good guy side, you do want it to feel like, hey, you're not just really going to walk down this beach and kill all these dudes without anybody noticing, right? You are. Oh, okay. Well, you're not actually going to get through this entire ship with your entire crew and nobody's going to get killed, right? Like, that's impossible. No, you are. Okay. And it just continues like that. And so it's scene after scene. There's even a scene in this movie where a girl looks like she is the most cornered she possibly could be. And you like what happens in the scene. So I'm not knocking the movie for what happens, because you don't want to see anything bad happen to her. But again, it just sort of solidified at that moment. I was like, oh, so literally they can get away with anything. They are just sort of Fast and Furious without being called the Fast and Furious crew. That's what they feel like. They don't really have any danger. And for me, that's a negative. Like, I got to the halfway point of this movie and I was like, they're invincible. They are 100% invincible. And they are in this movie. Now, my next negative is actually building off of another positive from earlier, and that is that whenever Henry Cavill's on screen, he kills it. So that's my positive from earlier. However, whenever it deviates from Henry Cavill and his crew, the movie just slows down to a point where it's kind of boring. Like, I enjoyed the moments with Henry Cavill. When it would get to him and his crew, you were like, all right, business just picked up. Let's do it. And you'd enjoy that scene. But then when it would get to the side characters, the characters on different missions throughout the movie, whether it's back with Carrie Elwes or it's back with other characters that are on an island for the movie, you're just slowed down. In this movie, I felt like the pacing hurt because of that, because I didn't feel invested in any of the other characters in this movie. I just wanted to be with Henry Cavill and his group of people that he was with going around killing Nazis. Like, that's what I signed up for. That's what works in this movie. But all of the side situations going on, the side plots in this movie, they just kind of bored me. And again, the main plot that they have with one of the girls that's a side plot in this movie is she is getting closer and closer to this like super Nazi who's a terrible person, and you just want to see him die. But they do it so quickly and they kind of just get done with it. You're just kind of like, wow, I followed that character throughout this whole movie and I went through some of her boring storylines just to get to this. And it was just this quick, like, oh, okay, that's done. So the side stories didn't work for me. My final negative for this movie is one of the negatives that I had for Operation Fortune last year, and that is that Guy Ritchie tends to tell a very tangled web of a story and then bring it all together at the end. A good director can do that. There's nothing wrong with that. But I find personally the Guy Ritchie movies that work the best for me are the ones where he's got a character, like in Snatch or The Gentleman, where he's got a character that sort of brings you along with the story, fills you in on the gaps throughout the story, so that when it does get down to the end, that tangled web feels like a very cohesive story. But when you get to movies like Wrath of Man or Operation Fortune, or in this case, Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, you don't have that one guiding person. Yes, Henry Cavill kind of gets you through this movie, carries this movie on his back, but he's not helping the audience understand every little plot that's going on. And again, I don't necessarily need that in all my movies, but in Guy Ritchie's storytelling, I find personally that I prefer the movies where one character sort of brings the audience to the end of the movie. Whereas in this movie, when you have the side plots and they get kind of boring, you don't have somebody that's kind of explained to you why these side plots aren't boring and how they're going to fit together, and can't wait till you get to the end because there's going to be something I'm leaving out and you're going to get it and it's going to be great. That is where Guy Ritchie shines. You don't have that in this movie, and you don't even get the snappy dialogue that Guy Ritchie likes to write for his characters, except for one scene of this movie between Carrie Elwes and Henry Cavill. I thought that worked really well, and I was like, okay, well, if you're not going to have somebody guiding me through, at least have that dialogue throughout. And you don't even get the dialogue. Like, you get that one scene at the beginning where Henry Cavill's being recruited to start this Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, and I was like, all right, let's do it. I like what I'm seeing. And then you don't get any more of that throughout this movie, and that was too bad. Overall, I will say, if you're a big action fan, you like watching Nazis get slaughtered by the hundreds, I think you'll enjoy this movie. If you're a fan of Guy Ritchie, I think you'll enjoy this movie. if that's not really your cup of tea, you're not into war style action films, or you're not a big Guy Ritchie fan, then this might not be for you. I'm going to say that for me, it personally lands somewhere in the middle of Guy Ritchie's movies, because I didn't dislike this like Wrath of Man, and I didn't love this like Snatch. And so it's somewhere solidly in the middle with the Sherlock Holmes films. But those are just my opinions, because that's my review for The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. Guys, have you had a chance to check out The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare yet? If you have, let me know in the comment section down below. Let me know if you liked it, if we agree or disagree on things. I always want to know your thoughts on these movies. I always love going back and forth with you guys about movies, so don't forget to do that. And finally, guys, if you like this video and you want to watch more, don't forget to hit that like button, because it helps the video, it helps the channel, and it helps me right here. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. All right, guys, we got to the end of my Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, and I've just had a blast making content this year. It's been so much fun. Hey, if this is the first time you're finding my channel, I would invite you to subscribe to my channel. I've got all kinds of Blu-ray collection update videos. I've also got movie reviews from the last several years, and I've done older movie reviews. If you like watching some of the movies that came out, I don't know, 20, 30 years ago, I've got some of those on this channel as well. With all that said, if you want to check out any of the other content on my channel, well, I've got all of my 2023 movie reviews right there, and I've got all of my 2024 movie reviews right there.